Commission special video meeting. I am Jody McCarthy, Parks and Recreation Commission Chair. In accordance with Proclamation 20-28.10 and the Governor's Extended Safe Start Order, tonight's Parks and Recreation Commission meeting is using video conferencing technology provided by Zoom. The Zoom video of this meeting is being recorded and will be broadcast live via Zoom and will be uploaded to the city's YouTube channel later this evening. City staff are participating in tonight's meeting remotely. Other public audience members are listening to the meeting by telephone or via the internet. Welcome to all and thank you for joining us tonight. Commissioners, please turn on your microphones. Will the city staff please call the roll?
Chair McCarthy.
Here.
Vice Chair Struck.
Here.
Commissioner Cohen.
Here.
Commissioner Birkenwald. Commissioner Westberg.
Here.
Commissioner Markson. Commissioner Markson.
I wonder if she's having trouble hearing us.
Oh, maybe.
Sarah, can you hear us? Yeah.
She looks like she's trying to dial in.
I'll make contact with Commissioner Markson, and we can note in the minutes that she's sort of there.
And then Commissioner Burstein. That's roll, Chair.
Thank you. Commissioners, before we start the business of tonight's meeting, here are a few rules to help the meeting run smoothly. If a commissioner has a question, please use the raise hand feature. I will do my best to recognize commissioners in the order in which hands are raised. Everyone will be asked to limit themselves to one question and to one clarifying question if necessary, so that each commissioner has a chance to ask a question before a commissioner is given another chance to ask a question. Additionally, prior to speaking, please state your name for those listening in on the meeting. Tonight's agenda will not include in-person public appearances in accordance with Proclamation 20-28.11 and the Governor's Extended Safe Start Order. However, individuals wishing to speak live during the appearances portion of our meeting may do so by telephone or using the Zoom teleconferencing application. Provided, however, they registered their desire to speak with the city admin staff by 4 p.m. today. Our city admin staff will call on you by name or telephone number when it is your turn to speak. This is the opportunity for anyone to speak to the Parks and Recreation Commission. All remarks will be addressed to the commission as a whole and not to individual commission members or staff members. If any person makes personal, impertinent, or slanderous remarks or becomes boisterous, threatening, or personally abusive while addressing the commission, they may be asked to leave the meeting. When it is your turn to address the commission, be sure to speak audibly and state your name for the record. Your comments will be limited to 3 minutes. I will provide you with a 30-second and 15-second warning when your time is about to expire. City staff, is there anyone who has signed up for appearances that wishes to address the commission?
Yes, Chair. We have 14. The first person slated to speak I don't see is on the call yet, so I'm going to move to the second. Brian Shires, I'm going to move you over right now.
Okay, we should be all set now, right?
Gotcha.
Okay, thank you. Hello, I'm Brian Shires, a resident of Mercer Island. I'm making an appearance this afternoon to ask the Parks Commission to support the reopening the bike skills area in Upper Luther Riverbank Park as quickly as feasible. The bike skills area is defined in the Luther Burbank Park Master Plan and should remain available for use by our community. The temporary closure was targeted to address and mitigate specific issues. The proposal prepared by Action Sport Design addresses those concerns and modernizes the operation of the bike skills area to be a defined set of bike skills features, which is the common method in nearly all bike areas in the region. Adopting at least parts of this proposal will mitigate the concerns of the closure and establish a baseline for a safe and cost-effective solution. The plan calls for developing dedicated lines with building methods that extend the durability with improved soil and will minimize future costs of operating the bike skills area. The closure of the area has directly impacted my family, including 2 middle school children who are frequent users of the space and created a void for on-island activities. Unfortunately, they aren't able to join this afternoon session as they're attending a track meet, but my kids valued the space not only for biking, but also for the hive for the community. Having a safe place for kids to be active outdoors is a great value for our community and promotes children's well-being. I see the positive impact that active time outdoors provides firsthand with my own kids in middle school, but also the riders I coach in the Mercer Island mountain bike team. Having this small skills area serves our local youth, giving the opportunity to engage in healthy activities without the need for extended travel. It's not always practical to leave the island. Enabling on-island activities minimizes the environmental impacts by reducing off-island trips. The bike team and the broader mountain bike advocates organization look forward to assisting in the maintenance of the bike skills area and other trails on Mercer Island. I hope our upcoming trail work event on May 5th in Pioneer Park is the first of many opportunities for us to work together. Thank you, Parks Commission, for your service to the community and your time to consider my comments today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Bharat. Shortly.
Hi there. Can you folks hear me?
We can hear you.
Great. Okay. My name is Bharat Chiam, and I've lived on the island for about 25 years. I'm also on the board of Friends of Luther Burbank Park and live in the neighborhood of Upper Luther Burbank. The Mercer Island Mountain Bike Team website, and you have the URL with you, states that it already practices in Pioneer Park, Island Park, and Upper Luther Burbank trails. And there are plenty of trails on the island. And they also list 11 other area parks on their website available to mountain bike youth. Duthie Hill Mountain Bike Park is a world-renowned destination located on 120 acres of dense evergreen forest. A 6-mile network of rolling single-track trails forms a 4-leaf clover shape with a 2.5-acre central clearing serving as the hub. The other 10 trails that they talk about are Black Diamond Open Space, 25 trails covering 17 miles. You have this whole list. Grand Ridge Park, 39 trails covering 23 miles. Paradise Valley, 24 trails covering 11 miles. St. Edwards Park, 35 trails covering 9 miles. Soaring Eagle Park, 29 trails covering 13 miles. Tapeworm Trail Network, 13 trails, 7 miles. Taylor Mountain, 19 trails, 12 miles. Tiger Mountain, 71 trails, 26 miles. Tolt McDonald, 70 trails, 26 miles. Tokel East, 51 trails, 21 miles. There's plenty of trails on the island, and we have no dearth of facilities for practicing mountain bike riding skills. What is being proposed here is a stunt jump area. There's no need to take apart a fragile forest, which is tucked away and quite difficult to supervise, to make way for this stunt jump area. What's more, there's no need to reward rapacious destruction of forest land by a small handful of people. That is what will happen if we take the illegally expanded area as the footprint for this stunt jump area. It's incumbent on you folks as people who protect our green spaces to kill this project forthwith. And it is not true that doing so will cause some kind of grievous injury to the small group of people who use this area regularly. And if you must create a stunt jump area, then please make sure you do it in a place where you can supervise it properly, where you can ensure that it isn't expanded illegally, and where lots and lots of trees and plants are not destroyed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Brett Lawrence.
We can see you.
Okay. Thank you. I just wanted to take a quick moment and, speak from a perspective of a resident of Mercer Island. My whole life, I grew up here. My life was spent pretty much in the ravines of Mercer Island, and it seems like that's something that's gone away over the years. I see this as a very important, accessible activity for kids. It's productive, it's energetic, and I think what we witnessed during COVID was maybe puts a better point on it, that we need places for kids to go to be able to have these activities. They need to be accessible. All of the places listed all over the Puget Sound really aren't relevant for after school activities. We need a place that's right outside our door where kids can go. We have lots and lots of land on Mercer Island. This is a tiny little area, and if you just go to witness what the enjoyment these kids have, and it's not a small group, lots of people ride bikes, and that's really the community we're talking about here. It's a fantastic opportunity. It was there, and I just hope that we can find a way to keep this going. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight, and I'll turn over the rest of my time. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Next up, we have Jay Greer.
Start video. Hello, can you guys hear me?
We can see you.
All right, thank you. Thanks for letting me speak. So my name is Jay Greer. I'm a resident of Mercer Island. I'm here in support of the Upper Luther Burbank bike skills area. My wife and I have lived on Mercer Island for over 10 years. We have 3 children currently in the Mercer Island school system. 2 of our children are mountain bike enthusiasts, and our youngest son, Sam, he's now 12 years old. He's on the Mercer Island mountain bike team. And I myself actually just joined as an assistant coach. Now, despite living here for all these years, we haven't felt the need to directly engage with the city on any matter until now. But with the fall's closure of the bike skills area and that closure's negative impact on a large number of Mercer Island children in the middle of a pandemic, both my wife and I feel the need to speak out on this topic. Kids have been biking in the Upper Luther Burbank area literally for decades. And this bike track has been part of the Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Master Plan for years. A simple Google search will show that biking has grown tremendously over the last decade. Many communities across the US are proactively supporting this growth, including the communities around Mercer Island. While the communities around us are building and expanding their bike areas, as pointed out by a Friends of Luther Burbank person, we did the exact opposite. We actually closed our area and are now debating whether it should be reopened or not, or how we should move forward, which is the exact opposite of what everybody else is doing as they attempt to support their residents. The Mercer Island mountain bike team is supported by a large group of students, parents, and coaches. Prior to the closure, members of the team used the bike skills area for training, not just stunts, for training. The team's coaches and leaders should have been consulted prior to this closure. We could have weighed in on this topic, provided stewardship for this area, and possibly addressed the issues that sparked the temporary closure. But I've since learned that the city wasn't even aware that Mercer Island had a mountain bike team. So we've used the last few months to build connections with city staff and with city council. They now know that they can reach out to us in the future on these types of issues. In fact, we're working with the city to provide trail maintenance support, and we have an event scheduled for May 5th, their team to help with trail maintenance in Pioneer Park. We've also helped with the bike skills area in the past and can be involved in the rebuilding effort once the area reopens. The head coach of the Mercer Island mountain bike team, Brian, he's the one who spoke earlier, other coaches and parents, and including myself, are in the process of creating the Mercer Island Mountain Bike Advocacy Group. It's going to be another group which the city can work with on mountain bike related issues. In terms of where all this is going, Action Sports has completed its assessment, obviously. I feel its recommendations are fair and reasonable. The report clearly concluded that the bike skills area can coexist with Upper Luther Burbank Park. In terms of us, earlier reference over a small group, but we have signatures of a petition supporting the reopening. The number of signatures is over 740 and climbing, and we barely tried, to be honest. We have far more signatures on our petition supporting reopening than the Luther Burbank does in terms of closing it. And we've been far less aggressive than they have. I've heard talk of looking at other areas. In fact, that was one of the options that's recommended. You guys are going to debate. Personally, I'm okay with exploring other locations, but I want the current location opened as quickly as possible until we identify and have a new location that can be cleanly transitioned to. This was supposed to be a brief temporary closure. It's now late April and the site is still closed. My ask is simple. My ask is for the city to rebuild a compelling bike track as soon as possible and make reopening this site a priority. A lot of Mercer Island kids are counting on you. And as the parents of 3 Mercer Island children myself, my wife and I are counting on you too. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
Next up is Ira Appleman.
Mute. Am I there?
We can hear you.
Thanks. Ira Appleman, 59-year resident. I oppose the illegal mountain bike scar in the Upper Luther Burbank Park Forest. The mountain bike scar was illegally created by mountain bikers damaging the natural suburban forest without authorization. I favor short-term option 1, keep the scar closed until a new plan is identified and adopted. Activity in the park is controlled by the Luther Burbank Park Master Plan, which was passed unanimously by the City Council on April 17th, 2006. I was involved in the master planning of the park, which was conducted by outside landscape architects involving hundreds of islanders over a period of months. City staff and this commission have absolutely no authority to deviate from the City Council adopted Luther Burbank Master Plan. Page 5 of the master plan concerns Upper Luther Burbank Park. It states that Upper Luther Burbank Park will be maintained in its existing naturalistic character. There was a very small controversial bike area, and the master plan states the existing bike track would remain. But expansion of the bike area was not authorized. The accompanying master plan cost estimates include absolutely $0 for bike area expansion, which was not authorized in the plan. In any case, recent city outreach has found mountain biking is a low priority on the island. Page 40 of the PROS plan adopted last month included surveys of the island based on 3,200 responses. Bike Skills mountain biking facilities received one of the lowest ratings, with 30% saying they favored it and 68% over twice as much saying they didn't favor it. Action Sports Design LLC is unqualified to make recommendations to islanders. They obviously know nothing about the island. Austin, Texas looks like a desert compared with Mercer Island, and their recommendations are based on the most biased public input that I've seen in 25 years of intense involvement, asking the mountain bikers who created the scar what islanders want. The most disappointing aspect of this fatally flawed process is that in 2006, local professional landscape architects worked with hundreds of islanders to come up with a final master plan, but staff and this commission are ignoring that plan in favor of an ad hoc recommendation to satisfy the lawbreakers who created the scar in the first place. If the city wants to change the master plan, it needs to start the master planning process again with qualified master planning professionals. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you.
Rachel Holloway is up next.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, hi. Rachel Holloway. I've been a resident of Mercer Island for 11 years. And I'm here to ask the committee to please reopen the bike skills area at Upper Luther Burbank. The closure this winter has had an enormous impact on many of our children. My son, who was actively riding there every day after school, has not been able to do his sport when he needs this whole time. which has meant more computer games, headaches, and general anxiety. We have to have the facilities for our youth here on the island. Kids need to have the space to unwind after school on their own schedule, exercising outside. No other trails on the island are for mountain bike use only, and putting this style of riding with trail walkers could be hazardous. I've tried to do as much as I can during my work to drive my kid to the closest mountain bike parks after school. That would be Duthie Hill in Issaquah. It's a 30-minute drive from Mercer Island. This is the park that Friends of Luther Burbank are recommending to the city to shuttle kids to. The jumps here are graded up to double black and can be in excess of 10 feet. My son can ride all of them. I'm always concerned about his safety there. And unfortunately, the last time he went, he fractured his ankle. It was incredibly difficult to get him out. The park is miles from the road, and on this occasion, the trail builders had left for the day and all the gates to the far roads were locked. I had to run miles to get to him. We were fortunate that other bikers were kind enough to help us push him on his bike a mile uphill back to the nearest road. I think we were lucky, but I did think if only Snake Hill was still open. It is a simple solution for after-school biking that can give a little exercise, socialization, and fun. It also builds the skills to be able to tackle the larger mountain bike trails in the area that opens up the sport to so many children. I know that mountain biking can be dangerous, and I ride bikes myself. It gives such a feeling of well-being. There's something about the adrenaline, the cardio, with nature all together. It's a feeling like no other. I will gladly allow my son and myself the possibility of danger to get the fitness and mental health. The accusations that have been leveled at our children during lockdown are wrong. The children descended on this park as the only space available. They've had harassment. And the damage that's been done, I don't think was intentional, but we've learned the lessons. The parents and the children of signing up to be part of the Mountain Bike Alliance so we can have better oversight in future. Thank you for your time.
Next up is Ronin Holloway Lamb.
We can see you, Ronin.
Okay. Hi, my name is Ronin Holloway Lamb. I've been living on the island for 11 years. I'm in support of the mountain bike park at Upper Luther Burbank. Teens after school have very few places to go. We have the skate park and we had Upper Luther Burbank Mountain Bike Park. And now that that's gone, all we have is a skate park that was built in the 70s. We need fresh air, and Snake Hill, Upper Luther Burbank Mountain Bike Park was a great resource. It allowed us to have a social gathering and practice healthy activities such as biking and trail building. Many of the people I've met there, I still continue to bike with even outside of the closing, and it created an amazing community of teens on the island. It's very important that we could have another space just to mountain biking, because it would not interfere with any walkers and then seeing nature. And so many people believe in supporting Mercer in Snake Hill that 748 people signed a petition to go keep it as an asset on Mercer Island. We will do anything to continue to have this amazing mountain bike park, and we just want to know if we can have it back. I'm speaking on the behalf of all the mountain bikers that went to that park.
Thank you.
Amanda Clark is up next.
I guess you can't see me.
But we can hear you, Amanda.
Okay, that's fine. Amanda Clark, Mercer Island. I think the staff analysis of the various options for building a bike skills area on Mercer Island seems very thorough. However, I think it really just begs the question, a bike skills area simply does not belong in Upper Luther Burbank Park. I think the analyses of the work involved, the environmental issues, and the estimated timelines show this. As noted in the options, there are challenges in the topography and the lack of stormwater infrastructure drains, which would have to be alleviated in this area. Staff recommended short-term option 2, reopening the current site with some improvements while they looked at other places, but those would require replacing the unsuitable native silty soil with clay soil. Does anyone know what the environmental impact to the surrounding area would be from the different soils? And this work also would involve heavy equipment, I think, being brought through the park to the site. What would be the environmental and financial impact on the surrounding park of that equipment? If this is a temporary measure, would the native soils have to be brought back in later? The timelines for the various options in the reports range from none to over 2 years, but the intermediate timelines or options average about a year plus or minus a couple of months. But the timeline for the recommended short-term option is not estimated. Is that 1 month, 3 months, 6 months before it's done? Would it open, say, this summer and then have to close a few months later in the winter? If this is just a short-term use, would it actually be worth it? And again, what does the promised increase in supervision and monitoring involve? I'm guessing that there wouldn't be restricted hours, say, or someone overseeing it there. So the monitoring would probably be inspecting the site at various times to make sure there's been no additional digging or other damage. And if there is other damage, what then? I mean, it seems to me, again, that the report glosses over this important issue. I didn't come to advocate for another location, but I am pleased to see that the staff has recommended an evaluation of Dean's Park, which from their description seems much more suitable in environment, the central location, and the amenities. And riders do. Okay.
You can keep going.
Oh, sorry, okay. Anyway, it seems more suitable. Its timeline is 12 to 18 months, which doesn't seem that much longer than other options for the current location. I know that you've been made aware of other reasons for not building an Upper Luther Burbank Park, like liability, the difficulty of access for first responders, the surrounding neighborhood. Is that it? Okay. As well as the funding or lack of funding. I hope that you'll look at all you've learned about the reasons to not build in Luther Burbank versus the reasons to do so, and see that the reasons not to build far outweigh the others. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jim Sweeney is up next.
Hi, I'm Jim Sweeney. I'm a parent of 3 Mercer Island teenagers, and I've raised my children on the island. I'm also a former assistant bike coach, as is my wife, for the mountain biking team. I should mention when we were competing a few years ago, Mercer Island was getting, with the exception of maybe 1 or 2 kids, getting creamed in all the competitions because all the other towns are way more advanced than we are and have better facilities to train, better access to facilities. That's not necessarily the reason why I think we should be doing this. I think there's a history of Snake Hill being used as a long history of Snake Hill, as Jay mentioned, decades of this being a bike park. I think that the lack of ability for the kids to do it right now it's heartbreaking that these kids aren't getting out. If you look on Google, you know, kids age 6 to 17 going outside has declined year over year since 2015. Mountain biking is the mountain biking, but biking in general is the #1 most popular outdoor activity for the kids that do get outside. Mountain biking is growing in popularity every year. We are losing the ability to get kids some biking skills. There's a lot of opportunity, economic opportunity out at Snoqualmie Pass. They're opening up a mountain bike summer program out there that needs to be staffed. We need kids that have all that, the skills to be able to do that. And you know, the other thing is I really respect all the work that Luther Burbank and Friends of Luther Burbank have been doing. And I noticed that they, you know, they try and take care of the needs of the island. And this island loves its dogs, plants, prickle bushes, pickleballers. Obviously priority over the kids though. And I think that needs to stop. And I think it would be really wonderful if the Friends of Luther Burbank could really stop and think about what would get the kids outside, how they could use this park more, and get the kids outside. You know, this has been in the plan, the 2006 bike plan. I heard earlier that it wasn't confusing to me, honestly, but how much was pickleball on the plan in 2006? I understand we're doing pickleball in the park, which is great. I think we need to adapt with the times. And I think there are people that need to consider that. And, you know, with all due respect to all the, you know, the work and the volunteer work protecting and growing our parks, I just think taking it a step back, getting over the fact that this was expanded. That was expanded out of need, I believe. You know, a lot of people said it was destruction. I see it more as so. You know, this is a park that is needed. The fact that it's not here right now is tough. And you know, I'm asking Friends of Luther Burbank and the opposing people to really think about the impact that it's had. And thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
Matthew Lamb is up next.
Hi there. Sorry, technical trouble. Matthew Lamb, parent and mountain biker. Parent of a mountain biker, keen mountain biker myself. The question about Upper Luther Burbank is all about a question of need. The facilities like this exist to serve community needs, if for nothing else. This is not pristine wilderness out in the middle of nowhere. This is a civic park that is there for the community to enjoy and to enjoy equitably. The need's pretty simple. Need a place where our kids can exercise, be engaged, can get out from behind computers and TVs, get out into nature and enjoy it, to physically exercise and can do it safely. It's somewhere you don't need to drive on the freeway to get to. It involves kids getting there under their own steam on Mercer Island. On the relatively safe roads here. It is ideally suited to serving this particular need. With respect to the 2006 plan, and I understand people hearkening back to a plan that very much suits what they see as being the future of this park. Times have changed. In the last 15 years, there's been an explosion in mountain biking. The Pacific Northwest is at the center of this explosion. It is incredibly popular. Every day I went down there, and I use it myself. Every day I went down there, I saw many, many kids, and diverse from the youngest, from 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, all the way up to, well, myself, not a kid, but it's used by everybody. It's been a fantastic focus for the community. It serves a very genuine need, and so I'd like I would like it to be maintained and continued. Thank you.
Thank you.
Meg Lippert is up next.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Meg.
Okay, thanks. Meg Lippert. The City Council wisely appointed a Parks and Recreation Commission with the express purpose of protecting Mercer Island parkland. But city staff has gone ahead and approved the expansion of a bike skills area and recommended its reopening. That was never presented to the Parks and Recreation Committee, and now the city staff is recommending the Parks and Recreation Committee rubber stamp the unwarranted, unofficial, and unapproved expansion of the original bike skills area. It's as if the Mercer Island Arts Association had plunked a building down in Mercer Dell Park without approval, and then city staff had sought approval from the Parks and Recreation Commission after the fact. Or it's as if the thrift shop had put up a building on the asphalt beside the old recycling center for their donations, and then the city asked the Parks and Recreation Commission to approve the construction. The Parks and Recreation Commission was not, as I said, established to rubber stamp the decision of city staff. The commission is made up of knowledgeable and dedicated residents who are responsible for protecting public parkland from abuse and unauthorized use, and they need the respect to do their job. What kind of a message does it give to our children and teenagers when they wantonly destroy a natural area and then promise not to do it again? The original BMX area was designed for young bicyclists to develop bike skills, but 50% of the current users are older teenagers and adults who can drive to larger areas with more challenging jumps, much more suited to them. When I hear that the users are going to respect the land in the future, I wonder who was naive enough to believe that my previous users have so blatantly ignored the original parameters. I hope that the Parks and Recreation Commission does not feel pressured to reopen this area when they were not consulted about getting feedback from the community about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Colleen Barnison.
Hi, my name is Colleen Barnison. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My family has lived in the neighborhood of the bike skills area for just about 10 years now. We're actually just a few blocks away. So it's on my regular walking path. My dog and I walk past the bike skills area just about daily for the past decade. And I've observed the kids using it and maintaining it. I've always been impressed with the kids that I've seen there. They're having fun, being outdoors, always polite, and they work hard to maintain it as well. My own kids are 10 and 12 years old now, and then in the past few years, they've begun to enjoy it themselves as well. And it's been an absolute joy for my husband and I to watch them build their skills there. I'm obviously very strongly in favor of reopening and protecting this special space for our children. I think in these days of video games, social media, screen time, it's really nice and refreshing to have an outlet for our kids that gets them outdoors. I think it's one of the more wholesome and healthy activities that they have available on Mercer Island. And I really think we need to fight to preserve that. It's also the only space of its kind on Mercer Island. Pioneer Park has great trails, but it does not have a skilled building place for mountain bikers like this. And Duthie Hill, which my family loves to visit as well when we can, is a considerable drive away. And so I don't believe it is a reasonable alternative. That's all I have to say. Thank you again for your time. I would just like to encourage everyone, let's work together to help keep our kids emotionally and physically healthy by spending more time outdoors doing activities like this. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Chair, that is the last of the appearances that have signed up and have been able to get on.
Okay.
Chair, I do want to mention Sue Stewart has been attempting to get on and she has not been able to.
Okay, well, why don't you continue to have Sue try to get on, and we can always have her come in because she has signed up to speak.
Yes. Okay.
So, yeah, maybe, yeah. But while we're waiting for Sue, I think we'll just keep going and you can just let us know.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so the first item under regular business is the bike skills assessment. And we welcome Public Works Director and Chief of Operations, Jason Kintner, and Deputy Director of Public Works, Aileen Summergren.
Good evening, Commissioners. Elaine Summergren, Deputy Public Works Director. I'm joined this evening by Jason Kintner, the Chief of Operations and Director of Public Works, and we're going to be speaking this evening about the bike skills area assessment that was recently completed by Action Sports Design. I'm going to go through the beginning of a slideshow. I'll be talking a little bit about the background, just a reminder of some of the background about the bike skills area and the history, some information about the assessment, which hopefully you've all had a chance to read thoroughly. It does contain quite a bit of information. And then Jason will come on and talk through the options that were presented in the staff report for this item this evening, and then make our staff recommendations about the future of the bike skills area. I know we want to get through this presentation as quickly as possible because we do assume that the commission will want to spend the majority of their time asking questions. I know there will be quite a few questions as well as discussion amongst the commissioners. So with that, I will jump right into the presentation. Chair McCarthy, can you confirm that you can see my screen? Wonderful, thank you so much. All right, so I am going to just jump right into some background information about the bike skills area, just as a reminder. So the bike skills area, which was originally called the BMX area, the BMX park, and has also been referred to as Snake Hill, we are referring to here as the bike skills area, and it was renamed pretty recently in order to reflect changing uses of the site. This area was actually created by neighborhood kids sometime in the 1970s. It was a very informal bike area. At the time, the land was owned by King County. As I understand it, and from other reports from staff and neighbors, the use of the area really fluctuated over the years, sometimes receiving very high use, sometimes receiving very low use, and it would expand and contract in coordination with that use. In 2003, all of that land was transferred to the city, both Main Luther Burbank Park as well as Upper Luther Burbank Park. In 2006, the city adopted the Luther Burbank Master Plan, which you've heard about many times tonight already. And there is not a lot of detail about the bike skills area or the bike track as it was referred to in the master plan in that document. However, it does say that the existing bike track would remain. I want to make clear that at the time that this master plan was adopted and created, there was no survey done of the bike area. We don't know the exact dimensions of the area at the time. And so I just want to make clear that we don't have that sort of documentation from 16 years ago. Since 2006, when the master plan was adopted, the city has been managing the bike skills area. And over the years, this management has really changed in various ways, depending on who's using the site. A few different types of ways that the city has helped support that area. Some soils have been imported for jump building in the past. The city actually provided a tool kit or a toolbox that users were storing tools in so that they would stay contained, as well as regular parks maintenance. So trash collection, and just going down and monitoring the site. The city also has had public meetings with the users of the site over the years, but as you can imagine, the users are, and many of them are in their teen years, and so we see users come and go as they age out and move off island. So maintaining a constant connection has been at times quite difficult. In 2016, staff really started to notice that the use of the site was increasing. And that was when we started to see the beginning of maybe notable expansion of the site. That year was the year that city staff installed fiberglass boundary markers at the site to really delineate the edges of the existing bike park and to try and dissuade users from expanding it any farther. Over the years, those boundary markers have been pulled out, they have been replaced, and so we have gone back and forth with the use of those boundary markers. We saw a really noticeable uptick during the COVID pandemic when a lot of kids were spending more time at home and looking for recreational opportunities on the island. And it was during that time that, and particularly in about 2020, when we really started to see that there were some issues with the bike skills area. Some of the things that staff were noting were that the jumps that were being built were exceeding the posted limits on jump height. There were unauthorized trails being created that fed into the bike skills area, so single track trails that come down some of the adjoining slopes. We saw some expansion onto adjacent slopes and particularly digging at the base of those slopes. And with that, we also saw damage to vegetation, both to trees that were surrounding the area because they were being excavated around, but also just the removal of soil was affecting the growth of vegetation. In early October 2021, staff made the decision to close down the bike skills area because the amount of oversight and maintenance that was needed to keep the site safe and within the parameters of operations for the city, it just exceeded our capacity. And so we decided to shut it down and really do an evaluation and launch an evaluation of this site to figure out what the future would look like and how this could be addressed. It was at that time in October when the city hired Action Sports Design to perform an assessment of the bike skills area. I do want to say that we did launch a search that was nationwide. We looked first at regional consultants that might be interested in doing this work and really be familiar with this land. This is a really narrow skill set and one that not a lot of consultants are qualified to do. So finding Action Sports Design was a great find for the city. We did consult with the Evergreen Mountain Bike Alliance on this project also. There were really three main things that the city was looking for in this assessment. We were looking for an assessment of the current conditions of the bike skills area. We were interested in finding out what Action Sports Design thought were areas for concern, things that needed to be addressed, particularly immediately to keep this site in operation. And then we were looking for recommendations on ways that the design and the operations of this site could be improved. Really, a lot of our focus in this work with Action Sports Design was focused on site safety, number one, and second, sustainability. So really figuring out if there was a way for the bike skills area to coexist with the open space area that surrounds it. We did receive the report in late March 2022, which, as you know, was much later than we expected it. But we are committed to continuing to move this project forward and wanted to turn that around to the Parks and Recreation Commission as soon as possible, which brings us here tonight. Just a quick touch on public engagement that's happened since the closure in October of 2021. The city launched a Let's Talk page exclusively for the bike skills area in October and has been posting updates on the assessment and the work that's been going on there, information about upcoming volunteer events, as well as it being a forum for receiving a great deal of public comment. It has been a really popular place for people to leave comment about their use of the site or concerns about the site, and the city has collected all of those comments together. Also, a part of the public engagement was 2 online surveys that were launched via the Let's Talk page. They were primarily focused on users, bike users of the site. We were collecting a lot of comments on all of the other sort of context of this, but we were interested in what the needs were or the interests were for the group that was actively using the site. There was a very high turnout on the first survey, which was more about general use of the bike skills area. We had 95 respondents. And then the second survey was much more limited in scope, and we received fewer respondents on that, I believe in the mid-20s. And this was really focused on particular jump elements and finding out what sort of interest there was. The city held a public meeting in mid-November 2021. And Mike McIntyre, principal for Action Sports Design, was at that meeting presenting and really presenting what his initial assessment had found, some preliminary recommendations to the city, and some next steps. And of course, I mentioned public comment. The city has received quite a great deal of public comment on this as evidenced tonight. And we have collected all of those comments for the record. Many of those have been passed along to you along the way. So I want to just really quickly touch on some of the results of the assessment that Action Sports Design did. There's a lot of different categories here. I'll run through them really, really quickly with some high-level takeaways from his assessment. The first one was about the soils. He did have concerns about the soils that were being used for the jumps. They're primarily native soils that are very high in organic matter and sand that are not at all suitable for stable jump design and really need to be constantly reworked. Another thing that he brought up was the drainage issues that he witnessed at the site. He saw water pooling in low areas and really no positive drainage off the site. So this means that in the winter months, there's a lot of mud on the site and a lot of standing water. The third part of the assessment was about grading. So this really speaks to a lot of different elements, different issues that he saw during his assessment. With these native soils being borrowed, which is a term that's used for when soil is moved around, it was being pulled from adjacent slopes or from next to jumps. And this was creating these very erosive embankments, undermined areas on the adjoining hillsides. And then it was also creating very steep slopes on the sides of jumps. And this was an issue that he saw affecting a lot of different components of the bike skills area and really impacting the sustainability of it. Fourth area was trees and vegetation. There are 2 primary issues here. One is that there are soil grade changes around a lot of the trees, either within or immediately surrounding the bike skills area. And that's with the soil either being excavated from around roots or piled up against a tree trunk, which can cause rot over time. That was one issue. And the second one was really just the impact on the surrounding understory vegetation. So with soils being moved or removed, they obviously can't support the growth of plants. And therefore there was some vegetation loss. In addition, on those unauthorized trails along the sides of the bike skills area, there was damage to the understory shrub layer. Another issue was surrounding circulation. He looked very extensively at the trail system that surrounds the bike skills area. His concern that he found in the assessment was that there is one primary shared bike and pedestrian trail, which does access the main entry point to the bike skills area. And he saw that as having a potential for conflict. We do know that bikes pick up a great deal of speed on that downhill trail into the bike skills area. And he felt like this is something that needed to be addressed. The signage is quite outdated and needs to be updated, particularly with updated rules. And he felt that the signage should be moved potentially to a new entry point for the bike skills area. And then finally, to the actual bike skills area itself, there were concerns with the jump line. So really looking at how well that very limited space, which is about 10,000 square feet, was actively being used for bike jumps. And that he felt that it could be used much more efficiently, that would actually, in a way that it could maximize the safety of the course, but also could improve the diversity of the elements that are contained within the course and the flow of traffic within the course. I want to show here just really quickly one element that the city took on as a part of this assessment that was outside of Action Sports Design's work, but really did feed into their assessment also, is that the city commissioned a topographic survey of the area immediately around the bike skills area. And I'm just going to point out a few elements on the topographic survey. The first one is that I asked them to outline which area had been disturbed. So this is areas where soil was actually impacted. There was no vegetation, there was some compaction. And so that area is now currently delineated on a survey. And so we can actually track how that changes, expands, or contracts. The second one is that the trail that runs along the side of the bike skills area, you can see here in yellow. And I want to point out that conflict zone that Action Sports Design had mentioned, which is where the trail is really right up against the bike skills area with no separation whatsoever. So there's really no barrier between those two uses. And then just quickly to their recommendations. In the very short term, one of the primary recommendations was that the city work to restore the native soil that was being used for jumps to all of the slope bases in order to stabilize the adjacent hillsides, and also to restore the medium for plant growth. So really, we can't grow plants without that soil getting back there. So really trying to stabilize those hillsides and reduce potential or future erosion. He also recommended that the city perform a full tree assessment of all of the trees, both within the bike skills area, but also immediately surrounding the bike skills area. One of the primary recommendations was also that the bike skills area should really only remain within the current impact area. So there is no proposal that would expand this area any further. He felt that the current area could really be used to build a course that would work for the users and could be built, like I said, more efficiently. The fourth point is that the course should be professionally designed. And while he did include a conceptual design in the report, it is, he made it very clear that one really truly needs to be engineered for the actual site in more detail. And that once it's actually designed and created, that it should be maintained in that designed form, so that it shouldn't be altered constantly by users. And that if there is any, if there are to be any changes in the future, that they also be done in sort of a design build fashion with a professional as well. One of the recommendations was that the city add a drainage system to this area to eliminate that pooling that is seen on the site during the winter months, so that we avoid the mud and the standing water. And then in terms of safety, there are a couple other recommendations. So as I mentioned, creating a bike entry point at the top of the course that would be dedicated on the south end of the bike skills area to eliminate those circulation issues of shared trails. They recommended that a fence be installed at that interface between the bike skills area and the pedestrian path at the north end of the course, and that the city install new rules and wayfinding signage at the top of the bike skills area. I do want to give a snapshot of what's been done on the site to date, just to bring you current with what's happening on the site if you haven't been out there recently. Obviously, as soon as the site was closed down, the city installed temporary construction fencing on the site to eliminate use of the area. As I showed you, we also had all of the site topography and the impact areas documented in a professional survey. The city has been out there with a small excavator, particularly last fall, to regrid the soils on the site. And part of that was removing all of the jumps and really leveling the entire site. But a lot of it was moving the soils that had been used for jumps back onto those hillsides, the base of those hillsides, to stabilize them. So it was really regrading this area in a very fine way. This, our parks arborist also performed tree assessments on all of the trees in and surrounding the Bike Skills area. And as a result, 4 trees were removed because they were either in declining or in severe decline or dead. Those were removed in-house. And then lastly, I just want to remind everyone that we had a volunteer event in March at which we had many volunteers show up to plant in those newly graded areas. 400 plants went in as a result of the volunteer event, and then staff went out and planted an additional 220 plants on the site. And this is in the areas immediately surrounding the actual course, not in the course itself. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Jason Kintner, who's going to talk about next steps.
Thank you, Elaine. So as outlined in the staff memo, we identified a number of long-term and a couple of short-term options for the commission's consideration this evening. So the long-term, we'll start with the long-term options first. The long-term option, the first long-term option is to redesign the Bike Skills area per the action sport design recommendations. Again, as Elaine mentioned, the report includes the conceptual design. This is purely a conceptual design for a new jump line layout and drainage system. The planning level estimate cost for construction is just over $200,000. But it requires, when we evaluate this option, it will require significant funding for additional environmental review and permitting, as some of the public testimony this evening talked about some of the challenges associated with the drainage requirements in particular. So this long-term option has a number of hurdles that will require staff and the consultant engineering team to go through and sort through first and foremost before a final construction design is completed. One of the benefits of this option, though, obviously, is to continue to engage with our users and provide lots of opportunity for public input into the design. Staff estimates that this long-term option would likely take 12 to 24 months. And my gut tells me it's probably closer to the 16 to 24 months. It's probably on the tail end of that time frame recommendation. That's long-term option number 1. Long-term option number 2 is to reopen the BSA with the new jump layout, but not complete the drainage improvements. Again, we would use the conceptual design for the jump line layout, but would not include the drainage system. The benefits to this is we anticipate the environmental review and permitting final construction design might be a bit easier than option 1, long-term option number 1. However, it likely turns this facility into a 3-season, likely a 3-season use facility. Once we have standing water out in the facility, it will likely be closed temporarily for winter while that standing water is there, and then reopened again in the spring. It's likely that would vary from season to season, year to year, depending on what the seasonality is with our weather systems as they come in, and would require some additional staff time, maintenance, operations to open and close that facility. But that is a long-term option that could be considered. This time frame is estimated at 6 to 12 months. Long-term option 3 is to reopen the BSA with no proposed improvements. The benefits of this obviously are immediate use for all the users. No significant proposed improvements. It would, some reshaping would take place of the jumps. Nothing like that would be outlined in the conceptual design or anything like that. No budget appropriation we needed because this will be handled through parks maintenance staff. However, the cons to it obviously are we're just kicking the can down the road. We're not addressing the issues that caused this closure in the first place, and not really providing a benefited, an improved facility for the users at the benefit to the community. This is not recommended by staff, but it is an option for consideration. So we wanted the commission to be aware of it. Again, the timeline would be immediate. We could be reopened very, very shortly. Long-term option 4, contrary to option 3, would be to conduct a public engagement process to determine needs and location for the new BSA. As we've heard this evening, we've heard for many months now since the closure of the BSA, even before the closure of the BSA, there's some very contrasting opinions from the community on whether or not the BSA should remain in Upper Luther Burbank Park or move elsewhere. In option 4, the BSA would be closed during this process that until a site is identified and the impacts and design are completed for a new facility. And a budget appropriation will be required for this option to come in and help identify potential locations, but also to conduct a public engagement and outreach process to make sure that we engage with the community on where that location could be well suited for the BSA. And it's likely that the public engagement process will take up to 12 months in its own right. So staff anticipates the BSA would likely be closed for at least 2 years as you go through a 10 to 12 month public engagement opportunity. You go through your design and permitting review and then actual construction. You're looking at 2 years plus for option 4. Long-term option 5, and as some attested to this evening, this might have been a surprise to the community. I will just say from a staff perspective, since the closure of this BSA, staff have been looking at other considerations for bike skills area. And Dean's Children's Park has risen to the top of staff's list for consideration as a potential location for the BSA. Some of the considerations that staff has taken into account, including the current park and use of space, the potential to the vegetation and the ecological impact and health to the surrounding area. We're looking for a space that can suit a BSA of equivalent size or larger. There's also been, over the past few years, there's been some discussions of some other types of bike amenities that may or may not be considered. So an equivalent course size or greater is something that was considered by staff as an important characteristic. The terrain, obviously, we heard from the community that uses this facility. They enjoy the open space, the natural feel of being in the woods surrounded by trees, and obviously the terrain, having enough fall in the jump line is important to the users. Additionally, nearby amenities, park restrooms, parking, even existing utilities, as we referenced before, the stormwater impact could be something of concern. So having those available park amenities nearby facility was something that staff took into consideration. And then obviously the ease of access for construction, general park maintenance oversight, and ongoing maintenance were key considerations in evaluating the long-term option 5. As that, so option 5 is actually consider relocating the BSA to Dean's Children's Park. And part of the reason for that is that the area that we're talking about used to be home to the adventure playground. And there's a picture of the great former recreation program that was used for many years out in this space. It's already been, this area has already been impacted by recreational use. It has an unhealthy understory. The vegetation in the understory is very minimal. That area has already been impacted by that recreational use. It's located mid-island. It's not on the south end of the line. It's not on the north end of the line. It's fairly accessible to both the north and south of Mercer Island. It's served by a nearby restroom and parking area, and the site's bounded by perimeter fencing. If we moved the BSA to the Dean's Children's Park, we anticipate it would take 12 to 18 months to, again, bring a consultant on board. We would have a public engagement process, obviously to work with the users to identify what types of features, amenities, different components of the bike skills areas would include in this park. Go through the design, permitting, and construction would likely take 12 to 18 months under option 5. Moving to a couple short-term options. Again, these were outlined in the staff report. Option 1 on the short-term side is to keep the BSA closed in Upper Luther Burbank Park until a new plan is adopted. As we've heard this evening, it's been closed for 7 months now. I will tell you, as we closed the BSA last fall, we anticipated somewhere in the 3 to 6 month closure. So we're already pushing that boundary or that anticipation of reopening out as it is today. We anticipate a new facility will take 6 to 24 months or more, depending on which option we pursue. And under the short-term option, the Upper Luther Burbank site's concerns have been addressed by keeping it closed until a new plan is adopted. So that's the benefits of option 1. Option 2 is to reopen the BSA in a limited temporary fashion while a long-term planning and construction phase is identified for the BSA. Staff have worked to address the immediate concerns that Elaine talked about earlier that prompted the closure of the Upper Luther BSA. It would require some new jump building and materials. Obviously, we wouldn't be using the soil that's on site. We'd have to import clay soils. We bring on a consultant to assist with the engineering and the reconstruction of the facility, help us develop a monitoring plan for this area. Again, it would be contained within the survey area that Elaine identified earlier. Expansion would not be permitted. As we reopen this facility on a temporary basis, while a long-term location is identified, it would, I don't want to call it a last chance agreement, but it would be along those lines, right? Staff will be monitoring this area very closely. We'd be working with the users to make sure that the facility is maintained and not expanded. And if the site rules aren't followed, the area will be closed again. The bike area would be fully restored once the new BSA location is open and operational. So we would go in there, remove the soils, restore the site, and make it, we treat it like open space, like the rest of Upper Luther Burbank Park, excuse me. Anticipate costs for the short-term option. Again, it's still going to require a budget appropriation. We anticipate it's in the $50,000 to $75,000 range. But staff does recommend the short-term option number 2 this evening. And here we are with the staff recommendations. The long-term recommendation, pursue a design. Staff's recommendation is to pursue a design and construction of a new BSA facility at Dean's Children's Park. Again, a budget appropriation is required. We need to hire a professional designer, an architect, engineer to come on and help facilitate that work. We need to engage with the community and help in aiding the design process, the features, the terrain, the different elements of that BSA, and then begin our permitting or finish our design and begin our permitting process for the long-term option. Excuse me. Staff's recommendation on the short-term option, as I just previously mentioned, was to reopen the BSA in Upper Luther Burbank Park while we work on the design and finish the construction of the new facility. Again, we'd be importing new building materials. We'd be hiring a consultant to help with this. Excuse me, sorry. Staff anticipates increasing monitoring of the site, and the site would be closed down if any alterations or expansion occurred. And with that, we are finished. And I'm going to get a quick drink of water real quick.
Thank you, Jason. Okay. While Jason is getting his glass of water, Sue Stewart has been waiting very patiently to do her public appearance, and she has been able to get on. So we will hear from Sue while Jason recovers. Oh, that's such a frustrating feeling.
Promoting student panelists now.
Thank you.
Chair, I'm not sure, doesn't seem to want to allow me to move her to panelist. I can allow to talk, perhaps. That's another option.
Yep. As long as we can hear her. We can see her now.
Sue Stewart appears to be muted. And I believe she's calling in, so I don't have a way to communicate with her.
Can you unmute her?
Ask to unmute. I can ask to unmute her, and I've done so, but would you like me to try and call her, Chair?
I know that she gave her, she sent in her comments to us. Correct? We have those comments. So if technically it's not going to work, then I think we're just going to move on and we will read her comments that were posted. And note that she tried to make an appearance. Brian, does that sound reasonable?
I'm comfortable with that.
Okay.
This is Commissioner Westbrook. Perhaps Raven could just read her comments.
I agree with that, Don Cohen. I was going to make that same suggestion.
Perfect. So you mean read it aloud or, yeah, okay,
Yeah, read it aloud.
okay.
Okay. Let's see his comments. So Sue Stewart, President, Friends of Luther Burbank Park, 4/26/2022 Parks Commission meeting. I invited every Parks Commissioner to visit Upper Luther with me, no takers. Okay, but I trust all of you walked all the trails in the park in order to register an opinion tonight. As of today, our friend's petition has 443 signatures, all voting age against having a mountain bike trick park in Upper Luther Burbank Park. We are heartened city staff recommends Island Park as the best location because it has a parking lot, restrooms, and the Dean's Park area has a lesser quality tree canopy than Upper Luther. It is mid-island rather than by the town center traffic. These are all good reasons. So build the mountain bike park once in the right place, Island Park. But wait, tonight's staff also wants commissioners to approve bringing clay into Upper Luther Burbank Park ASAP without incorporating any needed drainage and transform this BMX park that got illegally expanded and vandalized during COVID to function as a mountain bike park until such time the appropriate bike facility at Dean's Park is built. So staff is asking for 2 mountain bike parks on the island for these couple dozen riders. Will they remove the clay and unnatural soils from Upper Luther once the preferred park gets built? We hear money is tight. What if the right place never gets built? A critical truth is that Upper Luther signage says to this very day that it is only a lesser BMX course. When you visited and read the BMX park signage, you saw those posted rules. Rules systematically broken along with the lack of city code enforcement made the park unsafe for the public, both for the riders and for park walkers. So please say no to any quick fix idea of bringing clay and unnatural soils into Upper Luther Burbank Park. Friends, members are grateful, and so am I. The fall and winter volunteer restoration projects in Upper Luther Burbank have plants in place trying to take hold. I worked the Arbor Day event, very productive and fun. Another restoration project is scheduled for May 14th. This past weekend, more walkers were on the trails and down the deep ravine trail than I have seen in a very long time. It is getting broader public use. I am sure you have read the Luther Burbank Master Plan, page 5, that simply allowed a small dirt trail to remain with other park uses listed. Let's honor the master plan's multiple low impact uses and preserve it as an open space park for everyone in this year's comprehensive plan. The end.
Thank you for that, Raven.
You're welcome.
Okay. With that, I think we'll open it up for questions and comments from commissioners to Jason and Elaine. Vice Chair Struck. You're muted.
Thank you. Sorry, Peter Struck. Chair, I would suggest that we maybe look at the short-term option first and then go to the long-term. And my specific comment on the short-term is that the city staff, or the city, I'll just use the term the city, closed Snake Hill due to operational issues, not policy issues. The PRC was not involved in that decision at all. And therefore, I don't believe that we should be involved in an operational decision of whether to reopen or not. My view would be that from a policy standpoint, a bike trail is permitted per the 2006 master plan. And if you want to open it temporarily while we look at a long-term solution, that's up to the city to make sure that all of the issues that they identified when they closed it have been rectified to their satisfaction, whether by outside experts or themselves. So I don't think that the PRC needs to make any recommendation on the what's being termed the short-term option. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Peter. Commissioner Cohen.
Yes, thanks, Don Cohen. I mean, I have a lot of thoughts, but to try to consolidate a few of them, and I'm pretty sure I agree with what Peter just said, but I don't. Has staff determined whether the master plan requires any kind of amendment in order to go with number 2 short-term option because of the language that's in there? And I can't remember if it has the word existing bike trail or whatever it is or not. So
it had the word existing.
All right. So, and I don't know whether the city attorney has been consulted on that. The city attorney should be consulted on that if the city attorney hasn't been. So that's one comment. The other one is just asking a couple of questions that maybe staff can address at the appropriate time this evening. Where does all this water drain to? Does it all go down hill and come out that pipe down at the bottom there at the dead end? And how would that be affected by option 2 if that's the recommended one? And the other thing, sorry, I've taken a third one here. How many riders at a time, generally high end, low end? Well, low end I suppose is 0, but how many riders use it at any given time? Some of these questions are germane not just to the short-term solutions, but to the long-term ones also. And we hear very varied comments on numbers. It's not very many, or it might be 50, whatever it is. So those were 3 questions, I guess. Thank you.
Chair McCarthy, if I may, I think I got these written down, Commissioner Cohen. So I'll tackle a couple of them, and then Elaine, I'd ask you to jump in and talk on a couple of them as well. So as far as the master plan process, staff does feel, after looking at the master plan is it's a 20-year planning document. The BSA is permitted within the Luther Burbank master plan process. The existing footprint, there was no official survey recorded back in the day, 2005, 2006. There was delineation done at the site. There's a survey now that's been completed, and we will be able to determine whether or not the bike skills area would expand because we have a recorded survey now. I think if we all sat here and talked to each other, we would agree that it's expanded beyond the original means. How much? Is it 2 feet? Is it 5 feet? Is it 10 feet? I don't know. I think it would be hard for us to determine what that is just because of the location, and looking at aerial maps with the tree canopy, it's very difficult for us to determine. But we do believe that the BSA aligns with the master plan. It's identified as an existing facility, and it would be a determined use. As far as involving the city attorney in the process, the city attorney is involved in reviewing and working with us from a risk liability standpoint in terms of the use of the facility. As far as opining on whether or not the existing facility meets the master plan or not, we have not broached that with our city attorney's office. As far as the drainage of the site, the drainage that's one of the key challenges. How do you move standing water from the site away from the jump line? And it would conceivably go into the ravine area that's been identified in Upper Luther, because obviously we're not going to pump water up to 84th. That is one of the large questions that we have to work through from a permitting and environmental review standpoint. Would it even be permissible? What types of considerations would be and accommodations would need to be made from a permitting and environmental standpoint? Those are all questions that will lengthen that process out and be very challenging for us to overcome. At least that's staff's anticipation. Elaine, if you can touch base on how many riders at a given time and the use of the facility, and obviously the survey, I believe.
Yes, yeah, I'd be happy to. Just before I go to the number of users, and as that was recorded in the survey, I do want to address the drainage question for a second here, which is to say, Upper Luther Burbank Park in general has a great deal of topography in it. It has not just 1 or 2 ravines, it has several ravines, and it's a very complex drainage system. One of those ravines does have a stormwater pipe running through it. This is not that area. So if this area were not impacted by the bike skills area and the development of jumps and, just changes to that topography, and was just a natural ravine, more like how it was way back in the 70s, we would expect that water would just flow downhill in that ravine. And then it actually enters a larger ravine just northeast of the bike skills area. So that topography is already there, but because of alterations to the land is why we see the puddling in those areas. So it would just be reestablishing that drainage back into that ravine. However, as Jason notes, that would certainly be subject to environmental review and permitting. So that's an entirely different process, but it's the same amount of water that was captured before. It's just draining in a different way now. In terms of the amount of people that are using the site concurrently, so all out there at one time, that's pretty hard for us to assess. And it's actually one of the questions that we posed in the survey to users, because we were interested in how many people they're usually seeing at the site when they're out there. What I see in the survey results is that 21% of respondents said that they were out there by themselves most of the time, so just one person. 65% said that there were usually 2 to 5 people on the site at any given time, and 14% said that there were usually between 5 and 10 people. So this may have to do with different times of day. We did ask about the most common times of use also, so usually afternoons is the busiest time. So clearly there's a range there. I have been at the site many times, and I will tell you, I've never seen 10 people there at one time, but I may just be missing the high points. So I hope that helps.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Commissioner Westberg.
Well, like Commissioner Cohen, I'm trying to get my thoughts organized here a little bit, but so I have maybe what would qualify as a comment and also a question or two. So thinking back to a commission meeting we had several months ago, I remember asking Jason specifically, had the city made the decision to retain the bike skills area in Upper Luther Burbank Park? The answer to that was yes. And it was explained that that was an operational issue, or was considered an operational issue, and that was fine with me. I accepted that. And the commission kind of let it, didn't get involved at that point. Then subsequently, as Commissioner Struck pointed out, the city made an operational decision to close the bike skills area temporarily. It seemed at the time to address some of the operational concerns and safety issues and the environmental impacts that were taking place on the site. Tonight, we're back to discussing this, and you're requesting involvement of the commission on, number one, what is still an operational issue, which is, do we remediate to the extent we can and reopen the site? And you've also engaged the services of a consultant to give you some direction on what, if the site were to be retained in that location, what it might look like to be a better facility, both for riders as well as for mitigating the worst environmental impacts. However, given all that, your recommendation for long-term is to look for an alternate location for the bike skills area. So question number one is, what changed from the initial decision to retain it in Upper Luther Burbank to now thinking that we need to move it?
Fair question. So I stand behind the operational decision to close the facility. That was an operational decision. The request this evening for recommendation from the commission, it can remain an operational decision. However, there's an asterisk to that, and that is the city has received significant public comment for months regarding this facility. It's been at both the council level, the staff level, and the commission level. Additionally, option one on the short term or option two, you have two options. One is you could just reopen the facility without any budget appropriation, right? We talked about that earlier. However, if we were to reopen it with some form of a jump layout design, as staff's recommending, that is going to require a $50,000 to $75,000 appropriation to work through that process. As we go to the council and seek that appropriation, because that appropriation authority lies with the council, it is nice to have commission support if that's the option that we sure choose. So that is part of the reason we're here this evening to talk about that. Getting to your other question as to why the change in venue. I think it's important to note that contrary to what some believe, staff do take public comment seriously. We do try and listen to the community and what the needs of the community are. When I made the point about retaining in Upper Luther, since that time we've taken in quite a bit of additional public comment, and it did cause staff to pause and evaluate other sites. And we felt that it was important for us to look at other sites. And as we evaluated Dean's Children's Park, the area that was used by the Adventure Playground, we sort of had, as we were actually out on the facility, it was sort of like, oh, this facility might actually be a useful site for this BSA. And so through the staff's analysis, the public comment that was received, that's what's caused us to move to a different location as a recommendation for a long-term solution. As Elaine mentioned earlier, actually Sue Stewart's comments this evening regarding the canopy and the open space value is significantly higher in Upper Luther Burbank Park than the area that we're talking about in Dean's Children's Park. That's not to say it can't grow over time. However, as you start to take in the impacts into consideration with the long-term facility, Dean's Park makes a fair bit of sense, and that's why it's staff's recommendation this evening.
I have a follow-up question I'd like to ask, which is, and thank you for that, Jason. I wasn't questioning the operational decision to close it. I was just making the point that we're faced with an immediate operational decision about reopening, and then a longer-term decision about whether we do pursue alternatives for a different location. When you outlined your 5 options for long-term strategies or long-term possibilities, option 4 was to go through a more in-depth planning process that might consider multiple locations, but would involve extensive public input, more of a classic planning process similar to what was done at Luther Burbank Park back in 2006. Or option 5, which is jumping right to Dean's as the optimal location for placement of this facility. And the biggest difference between those seemed to be timing and cost, maybe. Option 4 would maybe cost a little more because you'd have to hire a consultant to evaluate different sites and things like that. But a number of speakers tonight spoke to the surge in popularity of mountain biking in general, the desire to get kids outdoors and keep them outdoors, and actively engaging in some type of physical activity. My argument would be it doesn't have to be mountain biking. There's plenty of things kids can do outdoors, but mountain biking is certainly a popular one. Wouldn't it behoove us to take the time to make this decision with following careful review and analysis that would come up with a location and a configuration that had extensive public input and that ideally everybody could agree with?
Everybody to agree with on a location, I think, is a stretch, Chair Westberg or Commissioner Westberg. So I think your analysis between the 2 options is fair and accurate. I think by focusing your attention on Dean's Children's Park, that obviously would rise to the staff's recommendation for location to consider. Your public engagement efforts are more focused, right? It's more focused on the attributes, the features, the amenities that can be completed at that facility. If you want to explore other locations, I would ask the commission to identify what facilities you would like us to look at, because it's going to cost the city a significant amount of money to go through that process. I will also remind the commission that you have a number of public engagement processes already lined up on the near horizon between the Groveland and Clark Beach Shoreline Master Plan, between the Mercerdale Park Master Plan. Those are just the parks related issues, let alone the rest of the city. You have a climate action plan that's underway. We're adopting the ADA transition plan next week. There's a number of public engagement opportunities that this community is going to be working on the near horizon that may impact, a broad scope, public engagement scope, and with staff has done the high level analysis and feels that Dean's Children's Park would be a location that would rise to the top. We can certainly talk about some of the other locations that you may be interested in as to why or why not staff didn't consider those. But that's partly, those are components as to why we focused on Dean's Children's Park versus a robust sort of all-inclusive, a la carte open process for other locations.
Perhaps you could share with us some of the other sites that you did consider even informally and why they were rejected.
Sure. So some of the sites that we've talked about, Clark Beach Park, that's come up a handful of times. Clark Beach actually circa 2015, 14, Elaine, somewhere in that time frame, There was a young group of mountain bike users who asked to put a mountain bike trail in Clark Beach Park. Similar effort to what you saw here at Upper Luther. The city worked with this group to establish a trail. It was, to be perfectly honest, it was 5 or 6 months of, some good effort on the parts of the kids, but ultimately didn't come to fruition because one, it was too far south of the island for kids to get to. Two, it was the site took it had to be carefully worked through the open space because, again, that open space habitat has a higher value than we were talking about at Dean's Children's Park. And it ultimately fizzled out after about 6 months, but similar process. So we've tried that at Clark Beach. Clark Beach has come up from time or two before. Other locations that have been taken into consideration, the Mercer Park hillside, again, similar types of analysis. The open space value is higher in the Mercer hillside. Larger pedestrian activity, different types of users in the Mercer Park hillside. You have a number of timber crib stairs in the Mercer Park hillside that have already expanded beyond the trail that staff is trying to get back, staying on the trail with. And so the number of the potential conflicts and locations and other elements at Mercer Park hillside didn't rise to that level. Aubrey Davis Park has been brought up. Again, Aubrey Davis Park is not a facility that's completely 100% owned by the city of Mercer Island. Is a shared property between the city as well as WashDOT. Establishing a trail location that doesn't involve locations next to a retaining wall. It doesn't have the same look or feel or natural terrain and environment that would be the mountain bike users have identified that they enjoy in Upper Luther Park. And it's, again, you have the potential additional conflict of other users in that area with kids going to and from ball field facilities. You've got already a highly used trail system for bikers commuting to and from Bellevue and Seattle. You've got dog walkers and other people out just enjoying the park. So the potential for conflict there was also a concern. Other locations, Elaine?
No, if you don't mind, I'd like to actually kind of zoom it out a little bit from specific parks, just to speak about open space, which is that a lot of our parkland is actually managed as open space currently, and in a way that takes a lot of the properties off of the table, right? Because these are being managed as ecological habitat. A fair amount of investment has been put into them already, into improving canopy and understory. And ultimately, we'd be looking at the same challenges that we're currently facing in Upper Luther Burbank Park in those competing uses. And so what that does is it really narrows down the amount of places that we really want to be looking at seriously. And like Jason, mentioned, when we start to really get granular about all these different criteria that we were looking at in between all of these different parks, there really aren't a lot of options that really jump out at us. And so, seeing the current impacts on Dean's Children's Park really spoke to us, because it's an area, it is really unique in that it has been used recreationally for many years, and those impacts are seen on the land already. So, so it's just a very unique site that opens itself up for an additional recreational use.
Right. I'm going to jump to Commissioner Markson. If hopefully her audio is working now. She has comments.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good, thank gosh. I guess I had a question about how much mountain biking we see in other areas of the parks, if you know.
Go ahead, Elaine.
Yeah. Well, as you may or may not have heard during public comment, we did have some folks from the Mercer Island mountain bike team speak to that, and also some users. We do have users in various parks, and this would just be on our currently maintained trail system. Particularly, I know Island Crest Park and Pioneer Park are used pretty commonly. I suspect a lot of other parks are, and we maybe just don't have documented uses of those areas. But we really do see mountain bikes on a lot of trails. It's just a very different type of use. That's I think there's they sort of fall into two categories. There's general trail riding, and then what Upper Luther Burbank offers, which is more skills building. So.
Okay. Sorry, I hope I can ask a couple questions. In looking at the options, I thought like in that option 2 of the short term, let me just get to the right one. It sounds like, you do recommend reopening in the short term in a limited fashion. And as I understand it, from what was said earlier, this would require importation of soil for jump building, but not necessarily doing any building. Is that correct? Like we wouldn't be putting jumps in place. We would just bring in material that someone could put jumps in place with.
That's a good question, Commissioner. Actually, we would, in option 2, we would be importing soils. We would have a design completed for temporary. It's a temporary facility, but it would be professionally designed and constructed. The days of letting the users build jumps on their own from staff's recommendation are no longer going to be possible. The free jump building, the unsupervised jump building is what we feel really put us in this predicament to begin with. And so what we will likely venture to is professionally designed, and then we will work with the community to do community builds under the watchful eye of the city and a professional engineer.
I'll note on that it's very likely that if we're to reopen the Upper Luther Burbank bike skills area in that limited fashion, it would be a simplified trail system. So it wouldn't be quite as complex as the conceptual design with 2, splitting out jump lines with different features on them. We'd be looking towards a more simplified design that would meet needs, but really not go above and beyond, because we want to be, a little more efficient about how we treat that space.
Okay, so it'd be more like allowing bikers to go through it, like on a trail that has soils that can handle it, but not with jumps. Is that
there would be jumps, so we would do a singular jump line that was just one loop instead. So instead of a more complex jump line with various options, it would maybe have a few jumps in there, a turnaround, and a return back to the top.
Okay, thank you. And so it is different than the option. Sorry, I'm gonna make sure I had the right option here. Number 2, which is a redesign of multiple jump lines. So, right, like, I'm just trying to make sure I get the difference between option 2 of the long-term facilities, which is a new jump layout. So it's just a more complex set of jump lines. Okay,
right.
Great.
Right.
And
sorry,
go
ahead.
Yeah. Go ahead, please.
Oh, no, I was just going to make that distinction between the amount of design effort and complexity that would go into the short-term and the long-term options. So certainly for a long-term option, we'd be looking at something that really does meet the needs of users. Creating a facility that really reflects what the desires are in the community for a long-term facility. We want to make sure that we're putting in that effort. For a short-term facility, we'd certainly be looking at something much more streamlined, a little quicker to implement, less complex.
Okay. Would the short-term, I noticed that the long-term option requires environmental permitting and all of the review, but the short-term option does not. Is that right?
Say that again. I missed the.
Oh, sorry. the short-term option didn't mention the need for environmental review and permitting. Is that true? It's just, okay.
Correct. It would be a maintenance of an existing facility. Would obviously work with our CPD department to make sure, but it would be a much more streamlined process. Nothing like the other options we're talking about.
Okay. Are there other, I mean, I'm just thinking about most of the comments, and I guess in my mind, they center around, you know, having a place for our kids and especially teenagers to go, where they can be outside, and, you know, destruction of park land. Like that seems to be a big, maybe it's not the only issue, but that certainly seems to be one of the biggest issues. And I guess maybe similar to what the previous commissioner said, I'm a little skeptical that well, I think you said this also, that there's a perfect site, like even Deanne's Children's Park, which I'm picturing all the little kids that play in that upper area, and then having teenagers riding their bike like into the Deanne's Children's Park area, you know, like, anyway, so I guess I'm just expressing, I appreciate this is a really difficult problem, but anyway, I guess I'm getting into my opinion and a little bit less of the questions. I just hate to see less and less options for the kids in our area to participate in, and I'd love to find a way for them to do that outdoor creative skills that they have, and as opposed to, you know, closing down now and then looking for a long-term solution. You know, having something either in the interim or in a, you know, medium-term solution, and then looking for a better solution. That seems like a better way to try and meet the diverse needs of the community. But sorry, that wasn't a question. That was just a comment. So.
Thank you, Commissioner
Thank
Mark.
you.
Okay, Vice Chair Struck.
Yes, thank you, Peter Struck. The commission, I think, at least since I've been on, you know, has done really good work. And I think the reason why it has done good work and generally has been widely accepted by council is it's very methodical in its approach, and it really does a lot of thinking. And so as I think about the long-term view, I think that we really need a little bit more time to actually make a recommendation. I know that the staff has suggested deans, and they pointed out some of the benefits. I think that there's some negative issues or cons that, you know, need to be fully, you know, vetted as well. And I think taking a little bit of time up front is going to save us a lot of time kind of on the back end, because I think sometimes I've noticed that when decisions get rushed, that then halfway through, you know, things kind of blow up, and then we're kind of back to square one. So I guess, Jason, one of the things I would really appreciate seeing at a future meeting would be this kind of a tableau of, okay, we've looked at 10 or 12 sites. I kind of went down the park inventory and said, yeah, you could probably do it here, here, here. And obviously you've done a lot of work on that. I wish you could share it in a kind of a more formalized manner so we could have a good discussion about it. Thank you.
So Commissioner or Vice Chair Struck, if I may, I just want to highlight a couple things, and I appreciate the slow and methodical approach, and I can assure you staff is not trying to rubber stamp this through. However, it is April 26th. You have a commission meeting in May. I haven't heard what, other than just the summary of parks and evaluation at a high level, why they would or would not work to bring back to the commission in May. In order for us to turn the agenda packet around for the commission, we're likely writing that between now and Thursday, with the council packet due tomorrow as well. So it's highly unlikely that this will be back on the commission's radar at the May meeting, which means it's pushed out to the June meeting. which then also means that it's not getting to the council until the second meeting in June or in early July. So at that point, you have now just potentially pushed out reopening the bike skills facility until fall, realistically until fall, until everyone's had a chance to review this and get through it. And I understand, we have an August recess scheduled for boards and commissions in the council. So that's why I'm saying fall. Time is of the essence in terms of doing something on the short term, at least with this facility. I can appreciate the long-term approach. And if we want to slow down on the long-term approach, that's perfectly acceptable. I think that's totally support doing that. But I do feel staff's recommendation, my recommendation, is that we need to find a way to reopen this facility on a temporary basis in Upper Luther Burbank Park while we sort out the long-term solution.
Well, if I can jump in, I mean, my earlier comment was that's an operational city of the city. You should be able to open it tomorrow. I don't think the Parks and Rec Commission has to approve that. That's an operational issue.
So if I may, you have no opinion whether it's the short-term option 1 or 2 is preferable to you?
What I said was that you closed it for specific reasons. If those reasons have been accommodated, those challenges, safety and so forth, there's nothing stopping you from opening it. It's not a policy issue, it's an operational issue. Thank you.
I think back to Jason's earlier point about this, I think the one of the sticking points there is that we will have to bring this to council regardless for a budget appropriation, and having a recommendation from the Parks and Rec Commission would certainly be useful for that appropriation request.
Okay, Commissioner Cohen.
Thank you. I'm troubled like Commissioner Struck, but I want to make a few comments on the Dean's Children Park idea. I was struck by what wasn't commented on by staff, either in the report or orally. Dean Children's Park was developed by the Mercer Island Preschool Association, and Commissioner Marston said, I go there a lot, as I only live a block or two away from there. There's toddlers there all the time, and you can leave your toddler alone. I want to know if staff has thought about that. I want to know if staff has touched base with the school district and with the police department about parking. And is this consistent with the Island Crest Way safety corridor analysis that's going on now, increasing the traffic there? Again, these are the reasons, Jason, these are the reasons that, at least for that option, it isn't as simple as walking out to Dean Park and saying, okay, hey, here's an area. You guys tell me a better area. I didn't react well to that suggestion. That's not our role. What's our role is to say, I walked there this weekend, and I asked a number of people, what do you think of this idea? And they said they're going to bring teenagers and young adults here when we use this for toddlers, and we use Island Crest Park for trail walking with kids and so forth. And you potentially have spillover, even though you have fencing. I've got a bunch of different things on here, but I was struck by everything that I heard was, here's a compromised place that we want you tonight, Commission, to say you ought to endorse staff's recommendation to do that. Now, I know an answer may be, well, all those kinds of things are things that would be evaluated during the process, blah, 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 blah. But I would like to know if anybody did touch base with any of those important user groups. That's a policy issue, whether you want to have human teenage adult interaction and potential safety issues with toddlers, et cetera. So anyway, I'm sorry I raised my voice a little bit, but I was struck. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Westberg.
I just wondered if Jason wanted to comment first.
I can certainly comment. I appreciate that. So the Island Quest Way Court Safety Court analysis is being completed with a consultant out of the Public Works Department. And our staff is very aware of that analysis that has been in conversation with the school district. As far as interacting with the school district as to the implementation or potential for a bike skills area in Dean Children's Park, we have not broached that subject with them. That would be taken care of as part of the design process, an outreach process that would occur. Same thing with the preschool association. That would be part of the public engagement process and outreach program that would be part of the project design.
Just one sentence just to respond, if I may, Chair. That's not good enough for me as an appointed official who's supposed to be making decisions based upon, at least, I'm not saying you get a signed document from those entities. I'm saying that I'm not prepared to go down that road on that long-term one without at least some, I mean, the Dean idea looked really good, but it just came out 3 days ago, you know? So thank you.
This is Commissioner Westberg. I did have a follow-up question or comment. Relative to Dean's, I agree that I don't feel prepared tonight to be able to vote on a specific recommendation that would indicate Dean's is the preferred option. I think it has a lot of good points, but I think Commissioner Cohen raised a lot of the same questions that came to my mind as I was walking the site today. And it's just having some better sense of what the thought, or recognizing that we wouldn't have a complete design, but just what the thought process is about how that site could work, how you could separate the biking function from the preschool park, how you'd integrate it with the existing athletic facilities, the tennis courts, the parking, the trail system, all of that. I need to have a few more of those things, discuss a few more of those things, I think, before I'd be ready to say, yes, let's forward this to council for a vote. On the other hand, with regard to the short-term solution, I think there is a big difference there, because in terms of those two options, and if we as a commission are saying, yeah, we agree, we ought to be looking at other options, then for a long-term solution, then there's a decision to be made, whether it's operational or not, about do we leave the present facility closed or do we reopen it on a temporary basis? And if we do reopen it, do we pretty much leave it the way it is now? And the way it is now, there's nothing there. There are no jumps. There's the turnaround berm at the end, but and there's the platform at the top. But between those two, the site's been leveled and revegetated on the side. So I'm not sure what you'd be reopening. And wouldn't you just, if you just reopened it in its current state, wouldn't you just be encouraging cyclists to come in there and create their own jumps with the material that's there? So the other option is we acknowledge that we're going to, given the importance of the activity to Island youth, that we're going to let it continue in that area temporarily, and we'll, as Elaine outlined, bring in some materials to recreate some jumps and make it a functional bike skills area, recognizing that all of that stuff would be removed down the road when a new area is opened. That seems to me to be a win-win as an option.
Thank you for that. All right, Sarah Markson.
Hi, Commissioner Markson. I guess, sorry, I have two very quick questions, and I do want to just maybe jump on a little bit of what Commissioner Westberg was saying. In the longer term option 1 and or 2, which are both be open, you know, per the ASB's recommendation, how long would you expect that facility to last? What would be the life cycle?
I don't, difficult question to answer, I think, because any facility that you build for the long term would need, you know, constant reinvestment to some degree, right? Especially when it's constructed of organic materials. And so I think it could be in perpetuity. It could be there, you know, as long as we wanted it to, but it will need to be maintained and, you know, rebuilt. And it could be that over time also the needs of users, the interests of users might change. And so it may be that 10 years down the road, you know, we decide that we want to, you know, alter the jump layout and bring in a professional designer to look at potential changes. So I think that's a little bit of a tricky question. I don't think there's any set lifetime.
Right. Okay. I'm not really counting like general maintenance in it, but presumably, you know, I think part of the design description is to, you know, build it so that it's not as easy to move around, right? Isn't that was one, like it's not as easy for someone to come in and make changes to it. It's supposed to be a static design. At least that's how it's described. Maybe the reality of that is a little more difficult to control, but okay, maybe we can't really answer a life cycle, but I guess maybe I've just been thinking about this and the conflict between, you know, something for the kids and not degrading the park. And, you know, and the fact that we don't really have a better alternative, that it seems like the best course of action that would hopefully meet as much in the middle as we can get is to rebuild in a stable fashion with a plan that doesn't, you know, with the goal of not allowing kids to dig and build new jumps and, you know, tear the park apart, which I know I saw comments that, of course, that's part of what kids enjoy. And I'm sure we've all watched our kids play in the mud, but, you know, maybe that's the compromise. They can't do that. At the same time, you know, they have a limited jump skills area that they can use. And like Commissioner Westberg said, if over that period of time we want to evaluate another area or purchase land for another facility, you know, maybe like you said, things definitely change. You know, we went from BMX to mountain biking. You know, who knows what will be the next big thing. At least we're not just closing off options before we have a better option. And I do think it's a real thing. Like when I think about what my own kids have enjoyed on the island, you know, some of the things that like the adventure playground, for example, and the BMX park, those were some of the things that they talk about remembering. And so I guess I'd hate to see other generations, you know, 3 years in his life or 2 years is a long time. So the quicker we can provide an opportunity that hopefully can be a compromise to prevent degradation, but allow them to have a facility they can work with, I think it would be best for the community at large. And in the meantime, we can certainly undertake a planning process. But as we all know, and as Jason pointed out, there's a lot of things planning, and they do take a long time. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Marks. And this is Chair McCarthy, and I just wanted to make some comments. To me, the most important thing is that these kids need somewhere to go and to be outside. So if it means in the short term that we're opening up the bike skills area and then continue to look at other options. I'm excited that there even is a potential other option on the island because, as Commissioner Westberg said earlier, we thought that this was the only spot that there would be any place to have it. Yeah, I think for me, I would like to go with the short-term reopening and to continue to look at other options, whether it's Dean's or developing Upper Luther Burbank further. And since we don't have enough information right now about Dean's Park, I don't feel like we are, ready to vote on that. But for the short term, I think, having somewhere that these kids can go on the island is super important. And as Commissioner Markson said, 2 years is a really long time in a kid's life. And I don't feel like we have that time available to just leave it closed and look at where it would be good to have it on the island still. Commissioner Cohen, one last comment, and then we will talk about doing a motion.
Yeah, well, this was prompted by some things you just said, actually. This isn't an advocacy one, but I wondered whether something, let's say that there's a motion to go with number 2 short term. We may want to think about whether either having a sunset provision or having a report back as of a certain time period or something like that, so that the people who oppose this in Upper Luther Burbank at least don't think it's going down this road and that's the end of the opportunity ever. It's the only thought I had. I don't know whether it works or not.
Okay, thank you for that. Commissioner Westberg.
I'm willing to take a shot at a motion.
Okay.
Okay, so I move that the commission support short-term option 2, which would reopen the current bike skills area in Upper Luther Burbank Park, and predicated on the city pursuing an alternative location that could be brought online within 2 to 3 years.
Commissioner Markson, you have a comment?
Yeah, sorry. I did want to just clarify that, and I probably wasn't. Anyway, that I think that if we're going to reopen it, like based on the cost difference between, well, I agree that we should reopen it. I think so I agree with that motion, but I am concerned about the benefit of short-term versus one of the longer-term options. And maybe we don't have time to debate that. We just have to pick one. But given the cost difference, I think, what is it, 75 versus 200K? I wonder if there might be some discussion about that before we vote.
If I could interject.
You know what I mean? Like,
well, if I could interject, just to explain to Sarah, what I'm trying to do here is separate the two. We're not dealing with the long-term option at all in this case, other than to say that by supporting the short-term option 2, we're doing it predicated on the long-term option being put in place. We don't know what that will be yet. It could be Dean's, it could be something else, but Dean's has been put on the table. But a number of commissioners have stated tonight that they're not prepared to vote on the Dean's recommendation because we still have a lot of questions about it. So, but we can proceed, I think, if the staff is looking for support from this group, we can proceed with a some kind of a statement or motion on the short term.
If I could just interject really quickly, we do have a motion on the table that needs to be first and seconded before we have discussion. So just a point of order I wanted to bring forward, Chair McCarthy.
Great, thank you. All right, so do we have a seconder for the motion? I'll second the motion. Can I second the motion? Is that allowed?
I can second the motion.
Okay.
This is Commissioner Markson.
Commissioner Markson is going to second the motion. Can you read the motion out again, please, Rory?
The motion was that the Parks and Recreation Commission support short-term option 2, which would reopen the bicycles area in Upper Luther Burbank Park. Predicated on the city pursuing an alternative location that could be brought online within 2 to 3 years.
All right, do we want to include the wording in a limited fashion? That was in the.
That's in the alternative, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what's in the number 2 short-term option.
This is Don Cohen. That's what I wondered. Rory's motion isn't too bad, but we need to have some parameters of that. The number 2 from the staff report says in a limited fashion. That's kind of open-ended. I know Elaine referred to it as a more simplified design or something like that, but otherwise it's a little bit open-ended, too open-ended, even though I understand that's the intent of staff.
Mm-hmm.
What would you propose, Don, to strengthen that?
Well, I guess I would say at least what Jody suggested, reopen the BSA in a limited fashion, maybe parentheses, e.g. More simplified design, comma, et cetera. I don't want to micromanage it, but something that gives the sense that it's going to be something that isn't the same as the report was proposing and isn't the same as it used to be, quite,
Yeah. Okay, I'm comfortable with amending the motion to say in a limited, to pick up that language in a limited fashion.
Okay. Okay, sorry, can you read it?
I hope I can.
I just want to make sure that we're getting it right.
So the motion is that the Parks and Recreation Commission endorse the short-term option or support short-term option 2, which would reopen the bike skills area in Upper Luther Burbank Park in a limited fashion, predicated on the city pursuing an alternative location that could be brought online within 2 to 3 years.
And Sarah has seconded.
Sorry, I have a question on the motion or concern with the wording about predicated on finding an alternative location. Is that what you said, Rory? Commissioner Markson?
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Or is it just a long-term solution?
No, it's predicated. That's intended to communicate that this is not a long-term solution, that we need to move to a long-term solution sometime in the next 2 to 3 years.
Okay, because but the long-term solution options, we're not all moving to a new location. That's, I think, what I'm trying to clarify.
Well, we don't know what the long-term option would be, a new location. We just don't know where yet. We haven't gone through that whole discussion.
Vice Chair Struck,
right.
You want to say?
Yes, thank you, Peter Struck. So I think we need to, I hate to do this, but I think we need to define limited, because again, we know that this is a contentious issue, and what's limited to one side may not be, maybe it's restricted to the other. So are we just, setting ourselves up for, more commentary down the road? I just raised that question.
Counselor Reynolds, you have your hand up.
Just a small technical point. I think when Commissioner Westberg made his original motion, he said it was predicated on the city pursuing an alternative location. And in the most recent rephrase, he said predicated on the city finding an alternative location. I think that's an important distinction. We should make sure you guys know which one you're voting on. Secondly, I don't think this needs to be part of the motion, but I just wanted to pass on a recommendation to Jason and Elaine and the staff that I think as part of the reopening, there needs to be an increased emphasis on engagement with the Mercer Island mountain biking community and the mountain biking club or whatever it's called, to make sure that there's accountability from that group on treating the site nicely, for lack of a better word.
Mm-hmm.
I presume that's something you would do anyway, but.
Yes.
Thank you. All right, Roy, I agree with what Councillor Reynolds said. And in the first one, you did say looking,
Finding.
Yeah.
I said, okay, I'm comfortable sticking with that.
Yeah.
Stick with that. That clearly signals that it's not going to be there forever.
Right, or that they will be looking for other options to see if that is the best spot that's going to happen. Sorry, Ryan, what would you like?
I was hoping to confirm with Raven that she is catching the, I got lost, I'm sorry. So
I know, exactly, that's why
I'm hoping she has a bit better grasp than maybe I do right now.
Mm-hmm.
So what I have is, it was moved by Commissioner Westberg that the Parks and Rec Commission support short-term option 2 to reopen the current bike skills area in Upper Luther Burbank in a limited fashion, parentheses, e.g. a more simplified design, predicated on the city finding an alternative location that could be brought online within 2 to 3 years.
All right, and the first wording was
that was the first wording.
That was the first. No, did you say, Greg? Because you said a different thing. It wasn't about finding a new location.
I thought the first wording was pursuing, which I personally thought was better, just because the city can't promise they'll find anything. We don't know, but we can promise, they can promise to try.
Exactly. I agree with the pursuing. How do you feel about that?
Well, we can't tell the city what to do. That's not our role. We're advising, but our advice is find one.
Yes, that's true. Vice Chair Struck.
Yes, thank you, Peter Struck. Just following up on my previous comment about trying to define limited, I hate to do this, but is one solution is that whatever the design is, that it comes back to the commission or the council?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
well, and then too, like we're saying that we're choosing option 2, which is pretty big paragraph as well. And is that, so that would be considered part of the motion as well, the whole paragraph of option 2 that we're saying? Now I know I'm making it really confusing.
This is Commissioner Westberg. Option 2 does define what limited, perhaps the detail that Peter's looking for. It says importation of jump building soils and no digging or jump building would be permitted, et cetera, et cetera. So
that's helpful. I think if we incorporate that or refer to that.
So we could just say on a limited basis as outlined in the staff report under option 2.
Yeah, for short-term option 2. Yeah. I agree.
Does that do it for you, Peter?
Does that make sense to you, Peter? He's giving it a thumbs up. Okay. So we have our motion.
Jody, this is Don Cohen.
Yes.
I want to go back to Peter's suggestion that that whatever the design is for this limited fashion, that be brought back to the commission. I'm not sure how I feel about that, but that's another protective mechanism from the point of view of at least one constituency group.
It is, although I would point out what Jason was commenting about before, that for it to come back to us, it might be the fall before we are able to approve, for it to come back to us.
Yeah.
Again.
My clients don't say, I don't care how busy. I mean, they say, I don't care how busy you are. And I know that the staff is very busy, but if we needed to, we would have more special meetings and we would go longer or start earlier. But I hear what you're saying. I guess I would defer to Peter on this one, given the change in the wording of the basic motion, how you feel about your earlier suggestion, Peter, about having the preliminary design or whatever you said come back to the commission.
Yes, Peter Struck. Thank you, Don. Yeah, again, my original comment, this is an operational issue, and now the commit, the PRC, we're getting all involved in all this operational stuff. So I think, yeah, it comes back.
Okay. Rory?
Sorry, could we deal with this as a separate motion? That would be one way to handle it, is vote on the motion on the table first, and then Peter introduce a motion that that the preliminary design for the temporarily reopened bike skills area come back to the commission for information and review.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And public comment.
And public comment.
Yeah, that's what I'm most concerned about. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And Raven?
Oh, I'm sorry. I just needed clarification, Chair. Did we want to use finding or pursuing in the first motion?
Rory felt passionate about finding, I believe. Is that correct, Rory? Okay. He feels passionate about finding.
Thank you. And
all right.
Then, I'm sorry, I didn't catch the additional motion.
Well, we haven't made it yet.
Okay.
I'm just suggesting that we address Peter's concern as a separate motion.
Yes. Okay. So we have a motion on the table. Sarah, are you still seconded?
Can I just read what I have? Make sure I have it all right.
Okay.
Okay. The commission. So I missed the beginning, but the commission endorses the short-term option. Oh, do you want to read it, Rory?
Raven's the record keeper. She should read it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Raven, thank you.
It was moved by Commissioner Westberg, that the Parks and Rec Commission support short-term option 2 to reopen the current bike skills area in Upper Luther Burbank in a limited basis as outlined on the staff report option 2, e.g. a more simplified design predicated on the city finding an alternative location that could be brought online within 2 to 3 years.
Okay, thank you. I second that.
All right. And then we're going to put it to a vote.
Everybody ready?
So wait, this is Don Cohen. Under that wording, when can the city reopen the bike skills area? It's the pending part that you didn't mean, Rory, that they couldn't reopen it until they found a new location, right?
Oh, no, not at all.
Yeah.
No, they could reopen tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Elaine, ballpark.
Well, we still need to find a designer. We still need to get a design and then make sure that we're working with CPD on any limited permitting we may need, and then construction. So this is not tomorrow by any stretch.
Okay. So let's deal with the first motion, and then Peter wants to make a motion.
Okay. I'm ready to take roll, Chair.
Yep.
Chair McCarthy,
Aye.
Vice Chair Struck,
Aye.
Commissioner Cohen,
I'm going to abstain.
Commissioner Birkenwald, Commissioner Westberg,
Aye.
Commissioner Markson,
Aye.
Commissioner Burstein.
Okay, so that motion passes, and now Peter would like to make a motion.
And Don helped me out here a little bit. So I move that the city, once a design has been completed or drafted, that it be brought back to the commission for review and support or potential support, and to include public engagement in that process.
I'll second that.
Okay. Raven, did you get that? Oh, sorry, Jason has a comment.
Can you please provide some additional clarification on what the public engagement should look like? How much are we talking about? What are you after? How many meetings, how many different surveys? What does the public engagement platform look like? Putting some description around that will help staff be able to come back with something that meets the commission's appetite.
Well, it sounds like you have some reservations. What would you suggest?
Oh, no, I don't have reservations at all.
Okay.
I'm asking for clarification on what you think that might look like. That will help us in terms of our scope and working with the consultant to help outline and orient that engagement platform correctly.
I think that I would view it as outreach to the community, through email, weekly notice, that, the design is available, using Let's Talk. Obviously, public appearances, public comment at committee meetings, commission meetings they're already there. I'm not at this point suggesting that we, maybe a town hall, maybe not. I guess that would probably be but no surveys or anything like that at this point I would consider.
How about Don Cohen speaking? How about something, I know this is a little bit amorphous, but just with reasonable opportunity for meaningful public engagement?
Yeah, so like have the Let's Talk available, have signs at the bike skills area for people to provide comment on it. Would that be reasonable? And have it go up?
I think that there has to be kind of a balance here, that as to Jason's point, there's already been a lot of public comment on it, and I suspect that as we get down to this, that we probably know the major groups that will be commenting on it already. So, but I think we need to give them an opportunity.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. I think by having signs put up at the Upper Luther Burbank Bike Skills area, and having a Let's Talk page and putting it out in the weekly e-newsletter, that gives people the opportunity to comment further on it. Okay, so I don't believe that Raven got the motion that you wanted to make, Peter, because you were asking for Don support, and then Don said, yes, I'll second it. So can you please read it out again for Raven?
Well, I didn't write it down, so maybe we'll have to play it back in audio, but
isn't it just something like this, that you move that, not to put words in your mouth, that you move that the previous motion that the commission passed be subject to staff bringing any preliminary design back to the commission and provide reasonable opportunities for public engagement, such as, and then the 2 or 3 that Jody and you were talking about.
That sounds fine to me, Raven. Did you?
Such as Let's Talk page and signs at the Upper Luther Burbank Bike Skills area, and informing people on the weekly city newsletter.
Okay, I think I'm gonna need that again. My apologies. Chair, I can get it from the recording if you'd like as well.
Yeah, I don't think that Peter's got it in his head. You got to write it down, Peter, so that you can say it.
Yeah. I wasn't planning on having to make this motion tonight. That's right.
I know, but you're supposed to have your piece of paper ready so you can write your.
Yeah.
Okay, Commissioner Markson has a comment.
Raven, this is Don Cohen. Did you not get the first part or not get the Jody part, or both?
So I got all of it, but I don't think it's in the right order. So
Well, why don't you read it back to us?
Well, it's all in pieces now. So Struck moved that the previous motion be subject to a preliminary design that is drafted and brought back to the Parks and Rec Commission to support and to include public engagement,
reasonable public,
reasonable opportunity for meaningful public engagement, i.e. Let's Talk weekly newsletter, signs at the bike skill area.
My only concern is that the previous motion shouldn't be subject to this motion. This motion is an additional action that we're requesting, that we're recommending of the city to bring forth, to provide the preliminary design to the commission to review and to provide for reasonable public participation in the development of that design. It's not subject, it's not a condition for the other motion.
Right. It's its own separate one. Sarah, did you have a comment, Commissioner Markson?
I like what Commissioner Westberg just said. I also wondered if, to me, there's like a difference between public engagement, which implies you're going to do something with the information, versus public comment. And it sounds like we're maybe talking about public comment or input, like for us to gather information about the design, but not necessarily. I don't know, I think I want to set expectations maybe of what it means to engage.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable.
Maybe comment sounds better than engage. I don't know if that's exactly the right word.
Yep, I agree that, yeah, we're not necessarily going to have public engagement, but we want to give people the opportunity to comment on it. Commissioner Cohen?
Sorry, I'm okay with that particular revision. I just am not quite sure where the word support fits in. I know that Peter said that in one of his models, but I'm not sure whether that still goes in there.
All right, so Raven, thank you for being so patient with us putting this motion together. Okay, so Peter, we want to take out, or yeah, I think that it probably is true. We can't predicate the other motion on this one.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, and recommend, but we just want to recommend that they bring the design back to us for review.
Right.
Yeah.
Are you writing up language, Peter?
Well, so I'm kind of there, but not there yet.
I'm sorry. Yeah, and we haven't had a break either. I apologize for that. I was hoping that we would be faster, although I feel like we're being pretty efficient. overall.
Kara, can I read you what I think I have?
Yeah, yeah.
Sure. Okay. Commissioner Struck moved that the preliminary design is brought back to the Parks and Rec Commission to support and to include reasonable opportunity for meaningful public engagement, e.g. Let's Talk, weekly newsletter, signs at the bike skill area.
So you just wanted to change engagement to comment.
Right.
Thank you.
And does support still stay in there, Peter, or not?
Read it again. I was having that same, I think it maybe should just be reviewed.
Yeah.
Drop support.
Struck moved that the preliminary design is brought back to the Parks and Rec Commission to review.
To be reviewed.
To be reviewed. And to include reasonable opportunity for meaningful public comment, e.g. Let's Talk weekly newsletter, signs at the bike skills area.
I think we got it.
Yes, thank you. All right. Don, do you still second it?
Yes.
Okay. Can you do the roll, please?
Yes. Chair McCarthy?
Aye.
Vice Chair Struck?
Aye.
Commissioner Cohen?
Aye.
Commissioner Birkenwald? Commissioner Westberg?
Aye.
Commissioner Markson?
Aye.
Commissioner Burstein? Okay, Chair.
Yes, thank you. So that motion has been approved. Yes. So we're going to, the wheels are in motion to temporarily open the bike skills area again and continue to look for a long-term option. Okay, so let's move on to the second item of business, and I'm going to welcome.
Jody, before we do that, can I just ask one question
Yes.
about it with Jason here? So Jason, as far as moving on to the longer term question of evaluating deans or whatever, what do you need? Where do you see that the next steps that you need? I mean, what I heard a number of commissioners say is we just have a lot of questions. We need more time to talk about this. Do we put this on the May agenda, our May meeting? How do we move forward on that? In your
That's a good question. Elaine and I will circle and try and unearth that process and path forward following this meeting. It's not going to be on the May PRC meeting. I need to talk with Ryan and see what else is on the June meeting. And he's laughing, so I know it's a dandy. So we're gonna have to circle internally and figure out what the best path forward is. It would be helpful to know what types of, I mean, it might, let us circle internally.
Well, one thing, Jason, that I was curious about is there a way to put a gate in the bike skills area that's away from the preschool area, right? Like you could just move the entrance to the bike skills area, like lower down or something like that, so that it's separate.
Potentially,
I was thinking like.
I think it's potentially, but I think what I heard this evening is that the commission's not ready to take deans independently from the rest of the park system. So it sounds like we need to identify some parks and go through, as Commissioner Cohen requested, sort of a line by line evaluation, or maybe it was Vice Chair Struck that recommended, one of you recommended this evening, that sort of a high level evaluation process that will provide to the commission in terms of what park may or may not be suitable in the long run. I think that's probably the best starting point based off the conversation tonight. Again, I reserve the right to change that mind after I go back and review the tape and talk with staff, but it seems like that's the direction from the commission they would like us to see. And maybe that's the starting point for the discussion for the long-term solution.
Well, it seemed to me that you listed off some part and some reasons why they won't work. So I don't feel like the list is going to be that long. I just think we need more information about how it would work at Dean's Park or a different park besides the bike skills area to make it flow the best for everybody.
This is Commissioner Westberg. Would it help if we sent to Ryan any question, following this discussion, questions, concerns, additional information that we need, whatever, and then that you could incorporate that in terms of your discussions?
Absolutely. Early questions is always helpful to staff in preparation for these meetings and discussions. So that would be most appreciated.
Okay, will do. Is that okay, Jody?
Yeah, I think that's a great comment. Thank you, Rory. All right, to Ryan.
All right, thank you, Chair McCarthy. I have about a 45-minute presentation here on the planning schedule. Actually, it could be very quick. I do just want to, so Jason made a comment about our meeting schedules a second ago, and they're full, and as this commission knows, we have a number of items that were laid out and policy items that were laid out within the Recreation Reset Plan that will be taking up a lot of your second half of the year. Good for me, we have a new staff resource and a recreation coordinator that's supporting that work. Maybe not as good for this commission is the amount of items that are going to come forward as a result of that resource. So I just want to preface that your May meeting, we're going to be talking about the athletic field policy as well as the KCLS engagement next steps. It was floated the idea of a subcommittee for that. I'm hoping to have a response from KCLS on the questions that we submitted to be able to discuss those at that May meeting, which if your heart's beating as fast as mine, that packet goes out on Friday. And so we're feverishly working to get that together from the staff end. And then also we have the 2021 year-end review that we'll be presenting to the Parks Commission. And so the commission understands what we're looking at from a staff standpoint is to provide that in more of a memo report format. We're not necessarily looking to report ongoing with that item. We're happy to take any questions and answer any questions. And as Commissioner Westberg brought forward, bringing those questions ahead of the meeting allows us to save a lot of time within the meetings. So that is always appreciated by staff. And then the real question I have for the commission, and I'm going to look for some thumbs here in a second, would be doing a joint meeting with the Arts Council at our June meeting, our June 2nd meeting. The reasoning for that is it fits perfectly with our Aubrey Davis Trail safety improvements follow-up discussion that'll come forward in June. That'll be that second reading. And that leads into some of the artistic elements. So it's our opportunity to sort of tag in the Arts Council during that meeting. We have the climate action plan update coming from Ross, our sustainability manager. And we also will have the 2022 service updates. So an update on where we are right now, as well as the proposed services for 23 and 24. If you're following along, that's a big meeting. It's a lot of elements. They're important, I believe, for the commission to receive. And so that's why we're kind of packing them in or requesting to pack those in with both the Arts Council and the Parks and Recreation Commission. And then we'll be filling out the rest of the year with a lot of those policy elements we talked about. And as Jason mentioned, we're starting to look toward public engagement processes for some of those planning projects that we have on the horizon leading into 2024. So actually that was much longer than I anticipated talking about the planning schedule, but the real question I have for the commission is, are you comfortable with doing a joint meeting on June 2nd with the Arts Council?
That can be a thumbs up, thumbs down.
I saw 4. I saw 4. That will,
Yeah, I mean, if you think it's important, then we should have it, you know.
Yeah. No, it's actually very helpful for staff. It's going to save us additional staff time by presenting the information twice on 4 different topics. So that's very helpful. And then since I'm still talking, I would remind the commission that if your term expires soon, May 4th is the deadline. Now, we don't have to wait till May 4th. May 3rd works, May 2nd, tomorrow, anytime to get those applications in or to encourage others to submit their applications is very helpful. So I was needing to make that pitch. I had some Darth Vader jokes because it's May the 4th, but I'm not going to go there tonight. So thank you.
I want to say that I already submitted mine, so it's down to you, Rory. We're looking at you, Rory.
Okay. Are we electing officers in June as well?
That is an agenda item on there. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. I am going to say that the next regular Parks and Recreation Commission meeting is May 5th, 2022 at 5:30. The time now is 8:22 and the meeting is adjourned. However, as a reminder to commissioners, please stay seated until the city staff has terminated the Zoom broadcast. Good evening, enjoy our parks, and stay safe and healthy.